Ave Regina, Mater misericordiae, vita dulcedo, estes nostra salve.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Joseph was the father. Jacob was the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary. Of her was born Jesus, who is called the Christ. Now this is how the birth of Jesus Christ came about. When his mother, Mary, was betrothed to Joseph, but before they lived together, she was found with child through the Holy Spirit. Joseph, her husband, since he was a righteous man, yet unwilling to expose her to shame, decided to divorce her quietly. Such was his intention when, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary, your wife, into your home, for it is through the Holy Spirit that this child has been conceived in her. She will bear a son, and you are to name him Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins. When Joseph awoke, he did as the angel of the Lord had commanded him, and took his wife into his home. The Gospel of the Lord. Pius IX named Joseph the patron of the universal church. Note the relief at the bottom of the altar of St. Joseph. It's Joseph being attended to by Jesus and Mary as he was dying. A lot of historians paint Joseph as an old man because there was this fear that if they didn't paint him that way, it might have looked like it was too easy for him to compromise his vows. So being old, it might have been, it was thought more safe to paint a portrait like that. On the other hand, Joseph was a vigorous man. He was with Mary, took care of her, taught Jesus a trade. He must have been a young man. And without compromising his virtue or Mary's virtue, even though he was young, he received special graces from God that could be given to all of us to temper our desires and treat Mary as she should be treated. And this is something that runs through a necessity for all men who desire to be espoused to someone. How did he manage being a husband, though, to Mary, a husband? And how did he manage preserving her virginity? Because he was obedient, because he listened to God's counsel. He was open to all the graces that were necessary to be given to him. And when we follow Christ obediently ourselves, these graces are poured out to us. It's interesting that if you look at your miraculous medals and you see Mary holding her hands out like this, and there are, looks like rays of light coming from her fingertips, those are noted as the unclaimed graces that people are ignoring, that they could acquire from the grace of God coming through Mary. And this happens because we can acquire these by simply being obedient to God and following his counsel. Jesus was known then as the carpenter's son, and Joseph was his mentor. He mentored him in his childhood and in his manhood. God commissioned him to help Jesus navigate through the reality of what it was to be human in his divinity. He is the person who has most loved God, it is said. He has most loved God after the Blessed Virgin Mary. He's the illustrious descendant of King David. And he is the spouse of the Mother of God. He is the model of what a working man should be. He's the model what a father should be in domestic life. He's the guardian of virgins that stands as an example of how men should treat women. He's the consoler of the afflicted. He's the hope of the sick. He's the patron of the dying. He's the scourge of demons. They tremble at his name. He's the protector of the Holy Catholic Church. And his obedience to God is a living example of our calling to be obedient to God, our loving Father, as well.
Regina Celi, letare, alleluia, qui aquam meruisti portare, alleluia, resurrexit sicut dixit,